Holy crap! How do narcissists know you know they're watching you and what their plans are? Have you ever stopped to consider what unfolds when a narcissist comes to the unsettling realization that you've seen through their facade? Buckle up, because the aftermath can be far messier and more volatile than you might expect. Today, we'll delve into this complex scenario, exploring what it means for you and how to navigate the storm that follows. A common question I often receive through countless comments, emails, and messages is whether narcissists are truly aware of their behavior. Do they know they're narcissists? Are they conscious of the profound insecurities and inadequacies that drive their actions? The answer, as with most things involving narcissism, isn't straightforward. But let's unpack it step by step. Think about the infamous cycle of shame and rage that defines so much of narcissistic behavior. This cycle is central to understanding how they operate. While it might seem like narcissists are entirely disconnected from reality, lost in their own web of fantasies, that isn't the full picture. They're often acutely aware of how their actions are perceived, and they understand at least on some level that their behavior is destructive. However, their overwhelming sense of entitlement and lack of impulse control often override this awareness, leading to a volatile mix of unchecked actions. It's as if they're compelled to release their chaotic energy just to stave off an internal collapse, a kind of pressure valve for their fragile psyche. Over time, a narcissist may begin to notice the ripple effects of their actions, seeing how their behavior strains relationships or creates conflict. Yet, instead of taking accountability, they lean into excuses, justifications, or outright denial. On some level, they might feel a vague discomfort or dissonance, sensing that their behavior is irrational. Still, their internal dialogue is often full of defensiveness. Why can't people just let me say what I need to say? I don't really mean it, I just have to get it out. To them, the world feels hostile and unfair, especially when they're called out or restricted. This inner monologue might continue with thoughts like, why does everyone make things so difficult? I know what's best. Why can't they just let me have my moment so I can move on? They rarely voice these thoughts directly, but are often acutely aware of them simmering beneath the surface. A pivotal moment eventually arrives in every relationship with a narcissist when they realize you've seen through their tactics. This isn't a loud, dramatic moment, but rather a subtle shift in dynamics. You stop reacting to their provocations and disengage from their gaslighting attempts. You begin practicing emotional detachment, perhaps even employing strategies like the gray rock method. You're no longer explaining, defending, or doubting yourself. Instead, you hold firm, confident in your understanding of their manipulations. You've stopped internalizing their criticisms, reduced your anxiety over their threats, and refused to fuel their passive-aggressive games. When this shift occurs, it's as though you've thrown a wrench into their carefully constructed machine. The narcissist, now acutely aware that their usual tactics aren't working, often becomes more unbearable than ever. They double down on their manipulative behavior, amplifying their cruelty in a desperate attempt to regain control. It's as if their insecurities, laid bare by your detachment, spur them to lash out even more aggressively. Picture it like a volatile graph, initially steady, but as your detachment grows, the line becomes wildly erratic, surging with their escalating rage and frustration. This phase is where things get particularly messy. The narcissist's attempts to provoke a reaction from you grow increasingly desperate. When their efforts to dominate or manipulate fall flat, their sense of powerlessness intensifies. Their cruelty often escalates as they flail in an attempt to elicit the responses that once fed their ego. The calmer and more detached you remain, the more unhinged they may become, creating a whirlwind of chaos in their wake. Understanding this process is crucial because it allows you to anticipate the narcissist's behavior and prepare yourself mentally and emotionally. While their reactions can be unsettling, staying grounded in your detachment is the most effective way to weather the storm and maintain your own sense of peace. As their frustration mounts to unbearable levels, they begin to escalate their attacks with increasing intensity, expanding their focus beyond you to target your closest relationships, friends, family, or anyone who might stand as your support system. They strategically pick at your most personal vulnerabilities, exploiting insecurities they've learned over time, such as undermining your career, ridiculing your skills, or lashing out at the aspects of your identity they know are most important to you. Their words are calculated, aimed precisely where they know it will hurt the most. The environment becomes suffocatingly toxic just when you think the situation has reached its lowest point, it somehow spirals further downward. Yet, if you hold your ground with resilience, refusing to crumble under their pressure, you may reach the apex of this turbulent journey. It is here that the narcissist, worn out by their own relentless attempts to dominate, often begins to deflate. Their energy wanes, and they may grow disinterested or shift their attention elsewhere. However, this moment of reprieve does not come easily. Reaching it requires weathering an onslaught of verbal, emotional, and sometimes psychological abuse, a storm of anger, manipulation, and escalating frustration. If you thought the early stages were difficult, what follows is often even more challenging. As you start to uncover the reality of their behavior, the narcissist becomes acutely aware that you are beginning to see through them. Despite their lack of empathy, narcissists possess a remarkable sensitivity to their surroundings, especially when it comes to detecting threats to their carefully curated facade. Their hyper-awareness functions through a self-serving lens. They're perpetually scanning for signs of disrespect, slights to their perceived superiority, or any indication that their control is slipping. They can sense even the smallest shifts in others' attitudes, particularly when someone begins to pierce through the illusion they've so carefully constructed. When a narcissist reaches the tipping point of realizing they have pushed someone too far, so far, in fact, that the person cuts ties completely, it often delivers a profound blow to their ego. This realization might not be immediately apparent to those closest to them, such as family members or partners, who may be accustomed to their manipulative cycles. However, the awareness that someone in their wider social circle no longer holds a favorable opinion of them or has outright rejected them creates a significant emotional impact. It stirs a deep, lingering sense of shame within them, though they rarely admit to feeling it. The moment they understand that people are actively avoiding them, it triggers a cascade of emotions: panic, powerlessness, and the unsettling realization that their manipulative tactics are failing. They begin to feel as though they are the ones being controlled, as though the tables have turned. This insight plunges them into yet another cycle of shame, fueling their volatile behavior. On some level, they may even recognize the irrationality of their actions, but rather than addressing it, they spiral deeper into an endless loop of denial, anger, and confusion. If you share a home with them, this emotional upheaval can make it increasingly clear that the relationship is heading toward its breaking point. For those who have begun to map out the intricate traits of narcissism, patterns start to emerge with startling clarity. This clarity is precisely why I created this channel, to provide you with an in-depth understanding of these behaviors, offering a guide to help you navigate the complex maze of narcissistic relationships. You can think of this channel as a GPS, carefully charting the subtle manipulations and emotional traps narcissists use. Once you recognize the pattern, everything starts to fall into place, allowing you to see the bigger picture. But awareness alone isn't enough. The true challenge lies in breaking free from the internal cycles of trauma, self-doubt, and emotional attachment they instill. When the narcissist senses that you're beginning to understand their game, their behavior takes a sharp turn. They swing between extremes, raging with hostility one moment and presenting themselves as calm, collected, and morally upright the next. Often, they'll attempt to regain control by proclaiming, "I'm really a good person," as if saying it aloud will make it true. Their tactics oscillate between overt insults designed to break your spirit and passive-aggressive remarks that leave you questioning your own reality. This erratic behavior reflects their desperation to maintain control, revealing the cracks in their carefully constructed facade as they struggle to hold on to the power they feel slipping away. The entire dynamic of a relationship with a narcissist revolves entirely around one central goal: control. They seek to control every aspect of the relationship: its public image, the people involved, the narrative they present to others, and most critically, the sources of supply they draw from to fuel their ego. This relentless need for control is the foundation of their behavior. So, when they sense even the slightest disruption or perceive any loss of this control, they react swiftly and often with escalating intensity. Any progress you make in understanding their tactics or seeing through their facade poses a direct threat to the carefully constructed world they've built, prompting a heightened level of rage and manipulation. To them, your awareness signals the potential collapse of everything they rely on for their self-esteem, and they'll do everything in their power to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, this anger and volatility won't simply fade away with time or effort. You might find yourself wondering, is there any way to navigate this without constantly provoking their fury? The disheartening truth is that the answer is most likely no. In time, you'll either grow so exhausted by the dynamic that you decide to leave, or, if leaving isn't an option, the relationship may devolve into a series of mechanical, emotionally barren routines. The narcissist may secretly wish you would just vanish from their life, relieving them of the discomfort of your presence, or they might actively seek ways to escape the relationship themselves. Often, they'll lash out, throwing dramatic fits or disappearing for stretches of time, knowing you won't follow. Eventually, they may reach a point where your mere existence becomes a source of unbearable irritation for them. At that stage, they'll either attempt to destroy your sense of self with their relentless anger or distance themselves entirely because facing you brings too much shame. Neither scenario is pleasant, particularly if you're not ready to let go of the relationship. You might tell yourself, I don't want this to end, but deep down, you may sense that the conclusion is inevitable. Even then, you might ask yourself, can I learn about this without them catching on? Sadly, that's unlikely. Narcissists have an uncanny ability to notice even the smallest changes in your behavior. It's both disheartening and ironic. For years, they may have seemed oblivious to your emotions, failed to notice your pain, or ignored your attempts to gain their attention. Yet, the moment you shift the dynamics even slightly by changing how much you cater to their needs or how much energy you devote to their ego, they pick up on it instantly. This heightened awareness stems from their constant vigilance in monitoring their control over their environment. Unfortunately, this means that as you begin to understand narcissism and apply this knowledge, they're likely to interpret your behavior negatively. They'll accuse you of being the problem, projecting their discomfort onto you. You may hear comments like, you've changed so much, you're so distant and strange now, or accusations such as, you've lost your ability to communicate properly. These statements are their attempt to reframe your newfound clarity as a flaw, making you question your progress and potentially luring you back into their manipulative web. The irony of this situation is almost impossible to ignore. The very knowledge that has the power to free you from their grasp is what may seem to trap you further, at least in the short term. This is a harsh reality that must be faced with patience and determination. Understanding narcissism doesn't come without consequences, and it's important to recognize that things might get worse before they get better. Your awareness disrupts the narcissist's control, and that disruption will likely provoke resistance. Still, this journey toward understanding isn't without its rewards. As you begin to view the relationship through the lens of narcissism, you might initially find some amusement in how accurately their behaviors align with what you've learned, almost as though you've stumbled upon the missing piece of a puzzle. You may think to yourself, this explains everything, it all makes sense now. But this clarity comes with a cost. When you start to act differently, the narcissist will inevitably take notice. This newfound insight disrupts their sense of power over you, which was largely predicated on your lack of awareness. Once you've identified their manipulative tricks, it's as if you're pulling back the curtain on a magician's performance. The illusion loses its power. Previously, you were swept up in a whirlwind of gaslighting, confusion, and self-doubt, but now you're armed with the understanding to see through the chaos. It's a pivotal moment where you find yourself thinking, so that's how they've been controlling me all along. This realization can be both liberating and unsettling, as it marks the beginning of a difficult but necessary path toward reclaiming your autonomy and peace. They will closely observe the subtle yet significant shift in your demeanor, recognizing with increasing unease that their ability to manipulate, confuse, or control you is slipping away. The once predictable reactions they relied on to sustain their power over you are no longer forthcoming, and this realization strikes at the core of their need for dominance. As their influence over you diminishes, their frustration grows exponentially, and in response, their hostility may become sharper, more frequent, and far less restrained. However, while this escalation can be difficult to endure, understanding the underlying dynamics is ultimately far more empowering and beneficial for you. This awareness provides clarity, allowing you to stop internalizing their behavior as a personal failing or blaming yourself for the toxicity of the relationship. It becomes clear that their actions are a reflection of their insecurities and not a consequence of anything you've done. While you are responsible for managing your response to the situation, you are not and never have been accountable for their behavior. This realization is liberating. It's not your fault, and you can stop carrying the weight of their manipulations on your shoulders. As you begin to grasp the full scope of their tactics, the intricate web of subtle, quiet control they once wielded over you starts to unravel. What once felt like an invisible yet omnipresent force dictating your thoughts and actions is lifted, and with it, the sense of being perpetually trapped under their thumb begins to fade. At this point, the relationship may take on a new, almost monotonous tone. Without the constant turmoil of manipulation, blame-shifting, and gaslighting, the interactions might feel unremarkable, lacking the intensity that previously defined them. While the dullness might seem strange at first, it is far preferable to the exhausting cycle of being told you're always wrong, second-guessing your every move, or struggling to make sense of chaotic, unpredictable situations. In this quieter phase, you regain a sense of stability, though it might still feel bittersweet as you process the emotional toll the relationship has taken. Still, this steadier ground allows you to focus on your own healing and growth, no longer consumed by the relentless battle to navigate their ever-changing moods and manipulations.